Number 10. Springlock doors. Something that has come up multiple times over the course of all of these games, a question that still has yet to be answered, is how do the doors open if the power turns off, considering that they're mechanical doors? Well, what if the doors are actually spring-loaded and it's the power that holds them in place, and then when they turn off they just snap upwards, I guess. The other strange thing in general about the doors is that they slide upwards, not sideways. That just means those straight looking sheets of metal are actually able to curl up somehow, being stored in the ceiling like a garage door, although I don't think that's what's happening, or that there is a wall directly above for that door to slide into, which would be a lot of convenient wall stacking, especially if this is a one-level building. Then it really doesn't make sense. Either way, I can only imagine that these doors would even be capable of springing open if it was the power alone keeping them shut, and that they are somehow spring-loaded to always be open, unless the power is on to push them down. That's the only way we can rationalize the way they work. Maybe this is also why our power runs out so fast as well. After all, I'm assuming it would take quite a bit of force and therefore power to keep them in place if they were spring-loaded. Number 9. Kelsey is Andrew. Kelsey is the new kid in one of the stories from Fazbear Frights, number 3, 1:35 AM. Coincidentally, I think one of my favorite books in the Fazbear Frights series. The story itself is also titled appropriately The New Kid. It centers around Kelsey, who is a new kid at school that everyone likes because he is so friendly and good looking. In the end, Kelsey ends up being betrayed by his new friends that he's made, who try to scare him by taking him to an abandoned Freddy's location and making him dance around in a Springlock golden Freddy suit, which of course malfunctions, killing him. Later on, one of the friends comes back for Kelsey only to get stuck in the suit himself and see a corpse inside that doesn't seem to match Kelsey's appearance. This corpse is noted as having black curly hair, which led many fans of the books to speculate that Kelsey is in fact the vengeful spirit Andrew, who also appears in another story later on in the book series, The Man in Room 1280 from the 5th Fazbear Frights book. In that story, the vengeful spirit, whom many believe to be Andrew, one of the spirits that possesses the Stitch Wraith, appears as a dark boy with curly hair wearing an alligator mask. With a description of his hair matching that of the corpse found inside the Springlock golden Freddy suit, it's easy to see why people think Kelsey is Andrew. And friends, before we move on to our next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists about all of the spring locks, so many spring lock things, so springy, so locky, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Plush Trap is from Sister Location, and what's more, might also be an older model Springlock suit? Based on what Circus Baby says about the Springlock suit we are stuck in coming from her old location, we could theorize that Plush Trap is also a Sister Location Springlock suit, especially since Plush Trap looks much older by comparison. But why do we think Plush Trap is also a Springlock suit? Well, it's interesting that in the book Fetch, we learn more about the Plush Trap animatronic, where it is implied that it can mimic the voices of other folks, something that prior to Fetch's release, only Sister Location animatronics seem to be capable of. This is what makes us think that Plush Trap comes from Sister Location and perhaps was an older animatronic brought over from Circus Baby's previous location. While Plush Trap doesn't really fit in with the overall aesthetic of Circus Baby's entertainment and rental, we do know that an older Springlock suit was also kept there. Does that mean that Plush Trap is also an old Springlock that initially was its sister location, just based on the voice mimicking? If so, how did they get to be with the Nightmare animatronics? And also, who wore the Plush Trap suits if they were ever worn, if they were Springlocks in that way? Was it designed for a shorter employee or possibly for kids to wear? Also, just to be clear, I'm not implying that that is the Springlock suit that we are in Sister Location when you're playing the game, because yeah. I don't know how tall Michael Afton is, but I don't think he's as small as Plush Trap. Number 6. Shadow Freddy and RWQFSFASXC. I think I said that all right. This theory, I believe, has been debunked, so just a word to the wise about that, but I still thought it was a pretty cool theory that existed, and I personally like the sound of it. I think it's a neat theory, hence why I'm gonna share it here with you, even though it's been discredited. But just know, we know that. The theory posits that Shadow Freddy and Shadow Bonnie were both victims of a Springlock failure. Phone Guy talks about the Sister Location experiencing multiple and simultaneous Springlock failures, leading some fans to think that might explain the shadow animatronics we see and what exactly they are. Spirits who are attached to the suits that they died in, but were for some reason unable to fully possess them, instead becoming a shadow-like version of that animatronic. I just think it's a cool idea. I mean, shadow animatronics are so mysterious to me, so when I find cool stories that could explain how they work, their theories, I love them.
Halfway through into number 5, Bread Bear. Bread Bear is an animatronic coming from the Day Shift at Freddy series who was created by Dave by modifying a Fredbear suit. The character appears in Day Shift at Freddy's 1, 2, and 3. Bread Bear's appearance is oddly similar to Fredbear, albeit wider, I guess because of the gluten. He is a golden colored bear animatronic wearing a purple top hat and bow tie, and 2 black and white buttons on his chest. He has gray metallic eyes, thicker arms and legs, a squarish brown nose, small brown pupils, small white teeth, round ears, with the insides being a lighter shade of color, and a very circular shaped stomach with brownish shades scattered amongst it. He has rips around his feet joints and arm joints, and he appears for real when Dave modifies an empty Fredbear suit and unleashes it during the Sting operation on Friday, in which, depending on which route you took, it either attempts to kill Jack, dies, or it destroys the entire pizza joint and then sets itself on fire. And you know what? We love that. We love the chutzpah. That's the kind of tactics we need in this cutthroat animatronic world.
Number 4. Bite of 83. We know that Fredbear was the one behind the Bite of 83 based on the minigames we see in FNAF 4, and we also know that CC was the victim of said bite and eventually died of his injuries. But what we don't know is why the bite happened. However, if you look deep into the lore surrounding Springlocks, it feels like a no-brainer here. Sorry, no pun intended, crying child. Sorry about that. We already know that Springlock failures have pretty much been an ongoing problem since the creation of the suits, and we also know that Springlock failures on a massive scale eventually got these kinds of suits retired. So what if the Bite of 83 was the major beginning of that? What if the bite happened because of a Springlock failure itself? All the clues seem to be pointing us in this direction. A technical issue is the only real explanation, as the animatronics themselves seem to have not been inherently malicious, not until they were bonded with spirits which lingered inside them, making them vengeful. And so if there wasn't a spirit in there, then we must assume there was a technical error, a Springlock malfunction. Number 2. Springlock suits were designed to malfunction. You have to wonder, when you learn how easy it is for a suit to malfunction, if the suits themselves were ever actually made with the intention of functioning in a safe manner. It seems more likely that they were made with the intention to do harm. The Springlocks can malfunction if not wound up securely and properly before the wearer dons the suit. Not winding up the springs properly can result in them simply going back to their original position, impaling the wearer. The thing that I find very suspicious is how a small amount of moisture, such as that which comes from heavy breathing or even just moisture in the air, can cause the Springlocks to completely loosen. These are also suits that you'd think were intended for you to move around in, acting as the character you were dressed up as, and yet in Sister Location we are warned not to move too much, as this can actually set off the Springlocks, implying either the locks were not at all secure when the suit was put on us, or that they are so temperamental that basic movements could set them off, never mind jumping around, dancing, or in general performing as the character that you happen to be dressed as, which is what I'd assume would be expected normally of an employee donning a mascot suit. Number 1. Henry sabotaged the Springlock suits. We don't really have a lot of clearly defined lore from the games that lets us know who really made all of the animatronics between William and his business partner Henry. In some continuities, it's implied that William is more the inventive one, whereas in others, William is more business savvy and Henry is more robotic savvy. It could be possible that the two were actually a little bit of both. I think that makes the most sense just based on everything we've learned about them. If this is the case, who's to say that Henry wasn't the one behind the Springlocks, and perhaps after losing his daughter, sabotaged said Springlock suits while in a vengeful state. When William, however, did not die from Springlocks impaling him, Henry had to resort to other means later down the road, like what we see in Pizzeria Simulator, with him rounding up all of the former animatronics and then burning the place to the ground. Or potentially with Henry being behind the burning down of Fazbear Fright, which also was a suspicious thing that happened, and we don't really know who's behind it, but I feel like Henry could make sense there.
And at 10, Grim Chica. The first Springlock victim in the Final Nights series, Grim Chica is a primary antagonist in Final Nights 3 Nightmares Awoken. Unlike the others, she is not a Reaper animatronic. Grim Chica holds a strong appearance to the Springlock suit on the poster for the Night 3 cutscene, but her face plates are very hard to spot. And she's also almost entirely purple. The glowing accents inside of her resemble a human corpse. She lacks a bib unlike the original Chica. Her overall body is very slim like the original toy Chica, except for her hips, which appear to be much wider for birthing purposes, and she lacks shoulders or upper arms, with her forearms protruding from her armpits. Grim Chica is also revealed to be a Springlock victim in the museum levels, saying, quote, "A victim of a Springlock failure, forever forced to haunt the suit she was wearing. Now being manipulated by your sister and mother. Tried spray on tan, still very pale." I relate to that. No matter what I do, I'll always be pale and pasty, okay? But I'm fine with that. However, while she is also a Springlock victim, she's in the suit that she was wearing, therefore she is a Springlock animatronic. Alright, so I'm like, come on. I mean, I'll also be like, what did you do to my girl Chica? Like, I'm sorry, Mommy Kentucky. I didn't mean to These are transgressions. Keep my wife's name! At 9, Grim Fredbear. Grim Fredbear is one of the antagonists of Final Nights 3 Nightmares Awoken. He is only active on Night 5 and is found in the left hallway. Grim Fredbear resembles the normal Golden Fredbear, only with his suit glowing a deep purple color while the interior of the suit glows a bright white. His upper face appears to be torn off, including his eyes, leaving an empty, hollow, gaping hole in its place. That sounded weird. The inside of the mask, though it appears like there is nothing inside, actually conceals a white, pale human head that can only be seen during his jump scare. And before you ask, yes, it's mine. This animatronic is clearly meant to be a reference to Shadow Freddy and the theory that these shadow animatronics were Springlock victims, which is later confirmed by Scott to be false when stating that only William was a victim of a Springlock failure. But in the museum level of this game, which unlocks after Night 5, it is also revealed that Grim Fredbear is a Springlock suit, saying, quote, another Springlock failure victim, the second generation of Fredbear. In it, a Golden Call. As a human when alive, Golden Call's name was Kyle. However, now he is a Springlock victim stuck inside a Golden Freddy Springlock suit. Golden Call has the typical run-down Springlock suit vibe, similar to Springtrap. However, this is much more gruesome. His left ear is bent, he has bugs coming out of basically every hole in the body, human eyes are hanging out of the animatronic's eye sockets, just dangling there, like my grandfather's tie. He's missing an exosuit on his right foot, and the character is holding a flesh-colored, at least flesh-colored, it might even be flesh-made phone in his right hand that stays stuck to his head via more flesh and blood strands connecting it. Yeah, it's gross. It's a monstrosity. And looking at the age on the wiki, Kyle was only 5 years old when he got springlocked, which is absolutely just horrible. God, that sucks. That would be rough. I would be offended if that happened to me. Like, yo, I'm only 5. What did I do to deserve this?
Number 7. Kelsey is crying child / Cassidy. While Kelsey being Andrew could make some sense, others have speculated that the corpse found inside the suit actually belongs to Cece, crying child. This is obviously because of the physical description of the corpse, which has curly black hair. A lot of people coming back to that curly black hair for a lot of these theories. This description matches the appearance of crying child, who also appears to have black and curly or wavy hair based on what we see in the games. But Kelsey is blonde. How does he fit in? Well, it is possible that Kelsey is the amalgamated manifestation of both Crying Child and Cassidy, who perhaps both haunt Golden Freddy if in this continuity they were both victims and have decided to share possession of the animatronic. Neither of them of course was blonde, but they could be changing their appearance together, using a disguise to go out in the world and trick bullies into trusting them. Cassidy could also possibly be considered the more aggressive personality, while Crying Child could be considered the nicer side, and also might bring the masculine appearance to the table when it comes to their disguise. Because obviously Cassidy was a girl, so yeah.
Speaking of which, in at number 6, Garvey, a psychopathic, cold-blooded killer. He stopped being human long ago. That's how Garvey is described in the extras of Dormitibus, the game from which he hails. Garvey is the penultimate antagonist to Dormitibus, and as a human, he was a man who killed the missing children, and later went on to get trapped in Spring Bonnie, becoming Springtrap, and then was burnt to a permanent death in the Fazbear Frights fire. That's where these two differ, okay? Garvey is a much more gory version of Springtrap from FNAF 3, and one that actually dies. However, it is not William Afton, as this game was released before the name reveal, so even before FNAF 4. Springtrap, but with hardly any exosuit or animatronic casing, whatever you want to call it, right? He crawls on all fours, uses his left hand as a foot and his left foot as a hand, like some demon crab thing that I did not want in my life. Okay, like just look at this thing and tell me that it's right. You'll be lying. You're wrong if you think that this is okay. Coming in at 4, Shadow Spring Bonnie. Shadow Spring Bonnie is one of the 2 primary antagonists of Final Nights 2. He is also one of the final animatronics in that game. Shadow Spring Bonnie resembles Springtrap, as to be expected when mentioning Springlock Suits, and similar to Springtrap, he lacks the suit on his feet and has the majority of his right ear missing. But overall, he has rips, but is not really missing any limbs or parts at all, which is a stark contrast to the burnt animatronics from the first 4 nights of Final Nights 2. His face glows white, which is notable when he is in the hallway, but also gives him a more sinister appearance, and pushes the something supernatural idea that most of these animatronics have, well the shadow ones at least. Like Shadow Bonnie from FNAF AR, okay? It's something like the Winchesters are gonna have to hunt. Well, Winchester. Shadow Spring Bonnie takes on the role of Burnt Freddy and Burnt Foxy on night 5. He is very fast, so the player must seal the vent quickly, otherwise they'll get jump scared, and he can also appear in the hallway. Never use the flashlight though, or you will get insta-gipped. Also, if he appears in the hallway, inspect his face, okay? If he's twitching, close the door, then a rattling sound will let you know when he's left, but if he's not twitching, don't. Okay, the fact that you need to look at his face to actually like kind of focus on it just makes him worse, okay? I don't like looking at faces, okay? I'm an antisocial person.
Number 3, Funtime Bonnie is a Springlock suit. Funtime Bonnie really only appears in sister location as an empty head. But what if there is something else going on with this animatronic? After all, there is one animatronic who we also don't get a good look at in the game, but who we are pretty familiar with by the end of it, just based on our experiences. That would be the Springlock animatronic that we are stuck in temporarily. While we never see it explicitly, we also never get to see Funtime Bonnie explicitly either. This has led some to theorize that Funtime Bonnie is said Springlock suit and is the older animatronic that Circus Baby was referring to. The only thing that seems odd is how new we'd imagine Funtime Bonnie to look, but then again, it's more likely that the animatronics at sister location are actually really old and have just been well maintained and possibly refurbished, and possibly, you know, hidden away there. After all, Circus Baby's Pizza World seems to be one of the first locations, I think. This timeline is hard to keep track of, so forgive me if I'm wrong about something that has not actually been confirmed. So I guess we can't really be wrong about much.
And ultimately, in at number 2, you! Spoiler alert for a fan game, but if I say which fan game, I'm going to spoil it. So if you want to avoid spoilers, click array right now. You can probably just skip to the next number using the timestamps, okay? Alright. I'll give you a chance to do that, and okay, that's your chance, that's it, you're done. Okay. A Shadow Over Freddy's is a FNAF fan game created by Fiznom on Game Jolt. It was released on the 25th of April 2018, and since it was made by the same guy who's currently working on FNAF Plus for the Fazbear fanverse, you know it's bound to be good. The gameplay of Ace Off is a hybrid between the traditional point-and-click game and a free-roaming horror game. The player wakes up to find themselves with no memories in a black and white abandoned Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and is tasked with surviving 5 nights and escaping the restaurant. The player is given a different task each night that they must complete before 6 AM, and without being attacked by any roaming animatronics, obviously. However, the ending to the game has you getting trapped in a Springlock suit and being left to rot, meaning that you are a Springlock animatronic, which is probably one of the scariest things of all, because I don't know you, but like I'd rather not get spring-locked. It's also revealed that you then play as Afton, so it's kind of a fan character, kind of not, but like it's a fan way of having it happen. All right, good enough for me. And finally, in at number 1, Fred Trap. To be honest, I searched this up just for the hell of it because like originally we thought that Afton was using the Golden Freddy suit to kill people, but there are actually Fredbear versions of Springtrap. Fredbear is exactly what you'd expect. Springtrap's look on a yellow Freddy animatronic. The designs are actually really well made and honestly scarier than normal Springtrap for me, and like I don't know why. I guess like for some reason when I just think bears are scarier than bunnies. I wonder why. I think that Scott made William use the Spring Bonnie suit because of how scared Scott was of Bonnie, but that's just idle speculation. That's like my kind of headcanon. There are also even more rundown versions and even scrap versions of Fred Trap, which are already haunting when you don't think about the fact that it would still be William inside the suit being kept alive by the spirit of his dead son. Fred Trap is definitely one of the most strangely horrifying versions of Fredbear or any Springlock animatronic that I've seen. And that's pretty damn impressive. In at 10, Shadow Animatronics. One of the oldest theories is that the Shadow Animatronics are the first Springlock victims, and while they are from the main FNAF universe, this is a fan theory, so it counts. This comes to us after the FNAF 3 phone guide dialogue that mentioned multiple and simultaneous Springlock failures, which some interpreted as multiple Springlock suits failing at once, since the term Springlock in this situation is used to describe the suit as a whole, and instead of the individual Springlock mechanisms that are present within the suit. So the line of multiple and simultaneous Springlock failures could mean multiple of the Springlocks inside one suit failing at the same time, or more than one suit failing at the same time. This led some to theorize that previous employees were killed in the Springlock suits, which is where the Shadow animatronics come from. This is supported by the fact that these shadows are of Freddy and Bonnie, the 2 animatronics that have Springlock versions, and while there are holes in this theory, this is, like, potentially the case. It's an idea at the very least. So yeah, shadow animatronics are fan Springlock victims because it's not confirmed. That's how I made it work. And at 7, Am I Real? Am I Real, also known as Cake Bear, is presumably the primary and most recurring antagonist in Dormitibus. Am I Real has 2 different forms. His first form is Cake Bear. Cake Bear's design originated from the Save Him minigame where he delivered cake to children while a child is killed outside. He is also the predecessor to both Fredbear and Freddy Fazbear. Cake Bear is a brown bear animatronic that also acts as a Springlock suit that appears in most of the main nights. Although they look slightly similar, the only similarities that he has to Freddy Fazbear is that they're both bears and they wear a top hat, are brown, and have blue eyes. That's about it. Am I Real's second form is Am I Real, and is a form that resembles Springtrap. This form has a green color much like Springtrap and contains human remains, because of course it does. His right eye socket has gotten bigger on the side and a big hole can be seen on the right side of his head. His top hat has received some withering on it as well, and his lower jaw is slanted and worn down. No longer circular like Cake Bear's. He has a sizable hole in the right side of his torso, revealing organs inside. Rips and tears also cover his arms, revealing even more human remains. He appears to be missing at least 1 finger on his right hand and is absolutely terrifying to look at. Of course, a decent amount of these are going to be from Dormitibus, because like, have you seen the Dormitibus animatronics? They're just horrifying.
Number 5, Yellow Suit. In FNAF 2 on Night 6, Phone Guy's call reveals that he is surprised you came into work at the location, as it is meant to be shut down for a while. He tells you that there was an incident that happened involving the yellow suit in the back, which many have theorized to be the Springlock suit used in the missing children incident, where 5 victims went missing. Some even think that this phone call is referring to that incident. Phone Guy claims that someone wore the yellow suit, and ever since, the animatronics have been acting strangely. Is it because they had victims stuffed into them, and possibly because those victims' souls are making the animatronics behave more aggressively because they're possessing them? I don't know, but it makes sense.
Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Reaper Spring Bonnie. Reaper Spring Bonnie, however, is the opposite of Shadow Spring Bonnie. This Reaper variant appears in Final Nights 3 and 4 and is an absolute monstrosity, but is definitely more terrifying in Final Nights 4, okay? He is 100% the scariest animatronic in those games. In essence, Reaper Spring Bonnie is a nightmare Springtrap. He has sharp teeth and a very damaged and withered body. His suit is a dark yellow in color. He sports a big purple bow tie on his upper chest, kinda like Glitch Trap does, which is ironic given that this released first, I'm pretty sure. And like other Reaper animatronics, Reaper Spring Bonnie has a pair of hollow dark eyes, kind of like my ex. In Final Nights 4, however, his appearance is much more disfigured and gruesome, with sharper teeth, sharper claws, a different jaw, growths resembling kind of shoulder pads made of fungi, and a gooier appearance overall. He's also missing half of his right ear, kind of like Springtrap. I mean, like, that's kind of like a given at this point. Like, if you're missing half your ear, it's a reference to Springtrap. But oh my god, okay, this thing is more terrifying than Springtrap. Like, this is what Springtrap should have been. Or honestly, what I think a nightmare Springtrap would look like I said. This is like a prototype burn trap in my eyes, or like a melt trap, which is probably gonna be the next iteration of Appen. Proto Trap though, that's a good one.